Hey Thor, how's it going?
I want to make sure, I always have problems with my mic.
Right? It's permanent technology stuff. Well, welcome everyone. This is Cedar and Thor, and we're doing our Tuesday lunch and learn session. This is a charting session that we take the members' requests for tickers they'd like for us to look at. I defaulted my chart, so I actually have two streams running now. I defaulted to Tesla because there's been some conversation about that in Market Talk today. So I went ahead and put that in there. But I'm going to have you kick off with the first one. So I need to move into the thread and see what that is, move it over to my chart. But this is really just an education piece for Thor and I to be able to go through with members. We, between the two of us, have more than 5 decades, so 50 plus years of trading experience. Thor 30 plus, I'm at 22 years. Maybe at 30 I'll stop. I don't know. Stop counting the numbers. Who knows? Anyway, the idea is to give you some different ideas about how we look at higher time frames, how we look at bigger picture rather than just the intraday uh, trading that we do primarily like in the day-to-day activities where we're talking about that a lot in market talk and a lot of charts, but this lets us step back and look a little bit more, from a swing perspective, from a long-term perspective. Even to some degree, we will talk about intraday trades, but it's more geared towards looking at the bigger picture, that look left concept. Oh, it's PayPal is our first one. So if you guys are wanting to watch what I'm charting, you'll need to switch over or pop out the other stream, and then you can activate a second stream. I believe you can have, because we're two separate, there are two separate accounts that are streaming, will allow you to be able to do that. And Thor, if you'd like, I'll have you start with PayPal.
Yeah, as soon as I brought it up, I liked it only because it's sitting right on support. I mean, dead on support right this minute at 68. Um, it needs to hold here, or it's gonna, I'm not really sure because it looks like it has a little bit of. I would think that this might bounce right here. I mean, I'm only because of the market action. I think it didn't continue off that breakout because the breakout was uh, right at 68, and well, maybe a little higher than that.
And are you on monthly or week? You usually start with weekly, right?
I no, I'm on daily.
You're on daily. Okay.
Um, yeah, yeah. The breakout was just above 68, and it did. It ran all the way to well, it really wasn't that much. It looks like a lot on the chart, but it wasn't. It only ran to 70.62 today, or a little bit above that. But if you're a long, it's worth trying to bounce right here. If the market changes a little bit, or PayPal shows some going against it, because it's still green considering SPY's down. It's trying, and I think that breakout right above 68 is the reason why. If it can continue to hold right here, you probably have a go zone.
All right. I'm looking at it on the weekly, and I just deleted the downtrend. We had a downtrend from back. We'd done this probably several months ago. Looks like moved our volume point of control down in that meantime, but the downtrend was from April 5th or August 15th, 2022, and second attachment point was in July 31st, 2023 for that week. And we were able to close weeklies over that level, but we didn't actually do much with it. So we are really just sitting here building power. And I think that's what you're talking about when you say you really liked it, is we have a bottom, at least the near term bottom, sitting at 50.27, and it could potentially be setting itself up very nicely for a inverted head and shoulders, the IHS, on the weekly, which is very, very strong. But we really will have to see. So we've got the left shoulder kind of in that pocket around uh, summer of 23. And then, of course, this near term low in the low 50s. So the question really is going to become, is this our right shoulder that is like 50, 58-ish range, 57, 58? So if we're considering the severe neckline at 75, then if we're just looking at technical patterns, then I would have to see that be the other side of the neckline. So it's a little bit sloppy right now, but it still could potentially be setting up. The main volume area that I'm looking at overhead is 73, 77. There is significant resistance there from how much time and volume we've put in there. So 73.59 is overhead resistance. If we do bounce from right here, our volume point of control is sitting at 63.09. We pulled that up slightly. So it looks like consolidation. I really like PayPal as a company, actually. So if you're looking to add long-term shares, I would definitely consider that if you're underrepresented from the fintech perspective in your long term, or looking for some longer dated. Now we are election year, headed towards the summer, so we want to be wary. We're not sure what's happening with rates. We've got FOMC tomorrow, but I'm going to definitely pick this ticker back up and look at the charts later this week once we have some more clear direction. Slightly concerned that Powell's going to be a little more hawkish than we've seen him, and I don't think we're going to get any rate hikes this year, but there is a slight possibility of it. And if he alludes to that at all, we could see a pretty good rug pull market wide, including financial companies like PayPal and the credit cards. So we really are just kind of in that holding pattern. Unfortunately, here we are again with FOMC. Gotta love it. I liked it better when they didn't talk this much.
Something else about some of these fintech companies, they forget it. They don't just make money loaning you money. They also make money holding your money.
Oh, just sitting on it. Absolutely. That 3 days for it to settle, they're making money on it while they settle it.
That's right. And the interest rate is where they're making the money on.
Oh,
So
that's
it's kind
true.
of like
That's a valid point. I like it.
Yeah, it's something a lot of people don't think about, that when you're sitting on money, you're making money on it. And even though the interest rates are high and you're not loaning money on those high interest rates, you are collecting money on those high interest rates based on the money you're holding in your account. And PayPal has a ton of money on their account, just like Apple. They're not sitting, when they say they're sitting on 50, I don't even know how much money they have now. 15 years ago, they were sitting on $50 billion cash. They're probably, I can't even tell you how much cash they have, but it's not actual cash. It's sitting in interest-bearing accounts or other type of accounts that collect money, that they're able to collect money on. So it's not always about how high the interest rates and how bad it hurts a company that makes money on loans. It's about how much money they're also collecting on the money that they're holding, basically of your money.
Right.
Apple, it's their money, but the fintech companies and PayPal and the rest of these, they're holding your money.
For sure. There are some concerns I have with the mortgages in relation to that in other fintech companies, but that's a conversation I'd like to have maybe down the road. As far as what they did with the lower rate loans during COVID and all that fun stuff, they're finding themselves a little underwater. However, PayPal is not doing mortgages as far as I know. I guess that's a good question. I haven't ever looked at it as a mortgage company. I don't believe so. So,
yeah, when I said that, I didn't necessarily mean PayPal. I was just really talking about the
in the financial world, for sure.
Just the fact that the interest rates are sitting up there, and that you were mentioning that they may not cut this year, which is true. But when people apply that to high interest and these companies that loan money, a lot of times if they're a company that also holds money, they make money on that money.
Absolutely. All right, next one, CLSK. I'll start with that one.
What is it again?
CLSK, Clean Spark.
See.
I'm going to pull my monthly volume profiles off just so I can look at it a little bit more clearly. So we are putting in some nice volume here, but man, how long have we've been tangoing in this range? Oh, guys, I think we've got somebody unmuted, so check your mutes. I do have the ability for members to be live on voice. Nikki, that would be you.
That'd be Nikki options.
Okay, I got it server muted. Okay, we're good. The background is gone. All right. So, put my monthly volume profiles back up. So we have our volume point of control since December of 23 is actually right where we wicked down to this week, 1654. So that area for me is a pretty important level to hold on the weekly close. I don't love this chart. I can honestly say I probably haven't looked at it in a while because of what was happening in March. Actually, I probably even haven't, it was probably February, and I was like, oh, I don't know what this is going to do. So I'll zoom out so you can see what it is. At that point, it really looked like it had already done its breakout, February, March, and it's consolidating now. It's really kind of just absorbing. And we do have our monthly value area high sitting lower, and we are in the last day of the month. So we've got 3 months of lower value, 2 months of our volume point of control being lower. And this is the lowest volume point of control we've had since we had that gap up that happened back in February. So I guess as far as near-term levels would go, below us, we have a little tiny bit of support at 1658. Once we lose that, I don't typically mark these levels based off of candle wicks. However, this one sticks out to me a bunch. It is also the lowest volume area showing from a volume profile perspective at 1367. We could go down there and put some volume in. But really, our next area of support is $10.83. That's the next time there's volume, and that actually takes us back to the gap. Got to get my cursor working. And actually, it doesn't take us all the way to the gap. So we have, that puts us in the middle of the gap. I would expect us to actually fill that, but the volume is there. $10.83 is the short target if we lose 1658.
I have a little different perspective on it, only because I'm looking at it in a different way than you are. If you draw a trend line off the bottom starting before February, the end of February, and you catch that, you catch basically three box wicks, actually four or five, and you set and you look for some support resistance on that trend line. We're right there now. There's a possibility we bounce at 16 based on that. What you said is absolutely true, but I'm just looking at that trend line and where it could possibly bounce and maybe grab a little something. And it's right at 15.80 to $16. There's a possibility it could bounce and maybe get a little bit there. I don't know if you can see that.
I'll
I
drop
can't.
it into, I'll drop it in and put what I think you're seeing, and then I'll post that.
Yeah,
So
I can't.
the weekly.
I can't post anything in the chat. I think I sent you a message.
Short Discord.
It won't let me.
Yeah, it should.
Yeah.
It's in the market. It's in the thread channel. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the category syncing is giving me a little bit of fits, but I think we're working through it. Okay, so we'll
just draw a trend line just before the end of February and draw it straight up through April 16th, and then right on the trend line, right around 16, run a cursor right across there, and you can see what it's catching and why I think there's a possibility it could bounce at 16.
Yeah, I definitely see that. This range right in here, I have to see. I do like it a little bit more on the weekly from that perspective, but I would expect the weekly backtest 1567 level. I can't do anything with this right here. I would have to see that we open next month with a little more vigorous buying. I guess that's the term. Now, looking at our weekly volume, in fact, I'm going to change out to monthly volume just for fun. So we do have 2 higher volume months. So February and March were both higher volume months with finding some profit taking. So lots of top wicking in there, a little bit lower volume. But if we look at relative monthly volume, this is our highest selling volume month of all time on this ticker. And that scares me a lot. So picking up volume, but not to the right direction. So this week is actually pretty low volume, but we are only early Tuesday on an FOMC week. I know ES yesterday had the lowest volume it's had in 16 months. So everything's just kind of sitting and it's on simmer. We're on pause. So yeah, I think CleanSpark is
Yeah,
an interesting company. It's it's alternative technology as we start to see more government spending, potentially looking at a second term president, that kind of thing could have some pretty good potential as far as alternative energy goes.
yeah, I liked it a lot better when I first looked at the chart as far as that bounce idea I had, but after listening to you, I thought, man, maybe it's just a short bounce opportunity. So that's why I added that it's
Yeah.
not as, I would watch it close if it did bounce.
Yeah, so out on the weekly, I mean, I guess there's some potential. I don't have the feels for it, I guess is the term. It worries me a little bit right here. I feel like there's some other better names we can be working on. But you could take it, you could literally just set a trend line on a daily close and set an alert on that trend line and say, well, I'll take a speculative long there. And if we have a close underneath it that has continuation the following day, then I just exit the position, really tight stop underneath. I prefer horizontal lines. This trend line has 2 attachment points. I would love to have a third for confluence that it bounce. If it wicked right to it, or maybe even right underneath it, but then close the daily candle above it, I would be much more interested. I just don't feel like after this many days, so 3 months in this range, that's a lot of time up there. That's somebody slowly, when you look at the weekly, slowly easing themselves out of a short position that they've been in, well, effectively from somewhere up here around 30s. So you've got a short covering pop, they let it come back down, short covering pop, let it come back down. And now starting to think, oh, dang it, I should have exited more. Okay, I'm going to let it breathe a little bit. And so that's kind of how I look at it, is if I were short, where would I be covering? What would I be thinking about? And is that what's driving the buying here? And I have just a very strong feeling the short covering buying is what's driving the volume here. That worries me with that highest volume monthly candle. All right, I guess I better get a chart posted for that.
I wish I had more time to go back and look at some of these charts that we talk about
Yeah,
and what they do. Sometimes if I remember we talked about it, I'll go back and look and see what happened, after what we said.
yeah.
But a lot of times, I only do that like 9 out of 10 times. I'll go back and see what actually happened with the stuff we talked about. I wish we had a way to track what actually happens to them after we talk about them.
Well,
It'd be interesting to
we've
see.
got all the videos, so I mean, we'd go back through them from that perspective just for little metrics, but I think it would be a lot easier rather than rewatching them to just start it from here forward. For sure, for sure.
You know what? I have an idea, and I'll mention it to you when we're off of this.
Sounds good. Okay, let's see. Looks like you're up for Microsoft.
Microsoft. I remember when it was $30,
Mm-hmm.
and not 30 anymore.
Nope. Wow, I got a lot of lines on the weekly. Good times right there.
I like this chart, but then as soon as I look at it more, I don't like it. That wick rejection 4 days ago, last week, I love with that bounce that it came straight up the next day and went from like 400 all the way to 411 or 13 or whatever. By the way, Yahoo changed their charts, and I can't just run my cursor around and see prices on point. You
So
have to actually.
frustrating when they fix it so it's more effective, right?
Yeah, it's
It's
terrible, because
not.
that's the only reason why I used it, is because of easy use as far as running a cursor around on it and finding prices. Now they ruined it. So I got to kind of fumble around and do it. But anyways, it went up to around 413, but then ever since then, boom, it's come straight down. Now, did they have earnings or something?
They had earnings on, oops, I'm dropping extra lines in here instead of, that's funny. All right, let's see what our earnings. Yeah, we had earnings on April 25th. So yeah, yesterday. Oh yeah, right there.
Oh, wow. Well, why did it fall like it did?
Well, it was
That's
a
interesting.
big wide, I mean, I'm looking at the weekly right now. But I definitely am surprised that maybe other people are too, that the earnings didn't do better from a big tech perspective, because this week is a pretty much an invalidation candle for me on the weekly. Could be possibly setting itself up for a 3-bar down. That would be, and I have my candles all white, so it takes the emotion out of it. So, really learning to just look at the actual structure itself. But red candle, green candle, red candle. Yee. So
Yeah,
if we have
yeah,
a
for
bad
me,
FOMC, it'll be a rough deal right here. We have only a little bit of volume. I'll let you start with levels.
yeah, to me, I'm looking at it straight up. If it doesn't hold here and it gets under, I mean, this is really simple for me. I don't have to go into any detail or anything else. I just see straight up, if it doesn't hold here and it gets under 395, it's gonna fall. For me, it's that simple.
I just posted my weekly chart, but 387 is the next near-term target. There is a little tiny bit of volume in there from back in January of 24. And we've got that wick from the previous week just above it. If we don't see a pretty significant bounce of buyers coming in there, 371.33 would be a short side target for me, just looking at this, to be back into our balance range from November 23 all the way into January. So that's a huge amount of support in there. That's our volume point of control. So all depends on what happens tomorrow with FOMC for me.
Yeah, to me, I'm looking at Microsoft. It looks like it needs to correct. Boy, it sure had a good time getting there though, didn't it?
It did.
2023, beginning of 2023, it was, where are we? 2023, it was right around 220, all the way to 428. So it doubled in 1 year. That's pretty good.
Pretty impressive,
About
yeah.
a little over a year. Yeah. Well, maybe it is time. But I would say, did you say something about 397? Or did you say 387?
387.60 is the volume point of control from that. I just zoomed into daily so I can look at this consolidation range that we're in right now. We're really at the bottom of a balance range. We wicked underneath it on the earnings, and of course, obviously, like gapped up really nicely the day after. This is where the earnings fall out on the outside, not the actual earnings itself, are interesting to play. As far as your trading goes, but we are sitting at the bottom of that consolidation box. Today's daily close is pretty important. If we close a candle body inside this range anywhere from April 25th, it's probably going to see more downside. If we can create a little more of a doji candle as we come into the end of today, which I don't really anticipate with FOMC on the plate tomorrow, but in that case, then we would be at the bottom of the balance range. And I'll draw a square in here so you can kind of see what that looks like visually, or a rectangle. Okay, so if we hold this on a daily close, we have a potential to move back up into the range of like 431. That's the top of the other side of that balance. I just don't see it when I look at that.
Cedar, you still there?
Yep. I look at that on the weekly chart. Oh, can you hear me? Oh, we might have lost Thor.
I don't know if I lost a connection or what.
Nope, I've got you. Can you hear me, Thor?
Yeah, I think I did. If you can hear me, I can't hear you. Let me disconnect and come back
Okay,
on.
sounds good. And this is where looking at tickers on different time frames is really important. I might even be a little bit high here, actually. I'm going to snug us back up a little bit. So top of that balance range is 429.61. I just don't see anything that's going to move us that direction unless something very exciting happens with FOMC. All right, replacing that chart so we have it updated. Next one is LLY. And I actually put this one in here because we were talking about it in Market Talk Might have been yesterday. I think we were post earnings was the note that I put. Yep, that was why I put the note, because we had a pretty massive gap up. So I'm going to zoom out, look at the bigger picture here. I posted some charts for it last week and said I really didn't see it as a strong upside, but it looks like the low supply of medication is producing a very nice revenue stream for them, probably charging more money to make sure that they can still monetize what that looks like in a lower supply setting. So our volume point of control for since January, really, let's call that 2024, is 775.62. This is not a name that I trade personally, but it was interesting because we discussed it yesterday, looking at the earnings and seeing what this gap up is. This changed our weekly candle pretty significantly to have the earnings gap up. So I'm going to drop some lines in here just for reference as an update to that conversation. So below 756.52, after that 734.65, there is a little tiny bit at 745, but not enough for me to mention. If we lose 734.65 on the weekly, downside is 703.74. And I'm actually going to make that a range to 701.66 to 703. We'll call it 701 to 703. I know it's got the pennies on it, but it's all good for me. If we lose 701, it's pretty much immediate back into the 668 range, and probably not going to stop there, back down to 643.67 and 626. And I'll do the same thing with the consolidation range. Do that same type of box so you can see it. And that's really when I talk about range trading. So top end of the range, 795.41. I'm going to snug this up here to 727.35. And I'll put this in the thread so that we have it. All right. So really what we're waiting on is a weekly candle close. I'm leaning more towards the potential for us to have this be candle close low towards the end of the box and for us to lose it, but I would need to see a weekly close below that mid 720s range. So again, back to FOMC, here we go. But this is an interesting little turn of events with earnings. So we'll see if we get an earnings gap close at some point when we look out a little higher time frame. As far as other earnings go, we tend to not fill them in a lot of instances. So this is a very high price ticker. We filled the one back in 22, didn't fill it in 23, didn't fill it in August of 23. So what we're really trying to determine here is if this is a gigantic bull flag that it's consolidating and building energy for, or if we've kind of found this as a topping pattern, because we definitely found some sellers up here at the top of this range, the 794 range. I'll go ahead and post this as well. So this one is a combination of charting from what I did for the member yesterday and a little follow-up. I like it. All right. Haven't heard back from Thor yet. Let's see if I have anything from Thor. It might just be me. We're almost finished with this session anyway. I want to try to get to the rest of these as quickly as I can. All right, Marek, I have ES charts that I will post outside of this just because I stream my charts for ES all day long. But I will definitely catch up with that as far as the higher time frame. But that's something from like market insights perspective, I have a bunch of content in. So I'm going to go out and catch AMD for Robo. This one, I think I need to go to the monthly. All right, last time I charted this, I had drawn a range of interest that was 176 to, well, basically 177 to mid 178 that I was concerned was going to be a rejection point, and it looks like it definitely did that from a monthly perspective. So now just getting a little more granular as far as what our price action is. I'm moving into weekly. Let's see. And I'm going to delete the line that I had previously at 180.51. That one did not work out super well. Our volume point of control right now, 176.79. And I'm actually going to delete the other one because there's not as much volume there either. So on the daily, it looks like we're trying to bounce off the 148.73 level. And I think I charted this. It's probably been 2 weeks since the last time we charted this, but they're all in the recordings under the Lunch and Learn in my YouTube channel. So looking at what we're doing as far as putting volume in, I'm going to move 157.42. I'd like to see us close 157.42 on the daily and not have the entire market get rug pulled tomorrow. Would kind of what I'd be watching here. So my question to myself when I look at a chart that's in this position is this going to turn into a dead cat bounce? Tomorrow's close will give us a lot more information as far as that goes. The green day that we had yesterday, oh, and today's earnings too, just a little side note, so I wouldn't be holding that into close. Earnings before FOMC. Yesterday's green bounce day was really low volume. We have had some lower volume days. Let's see how many. This year, I've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've had about 6 or 7. We've had a handful of lower volume days compared to yesterday. So that doesn't convince me that things are going to be great as far as continuation on bounce unless it's moving with the market. So that's one of those. I would definitely keep an eye on QQQ for what's happening overall in technology, because I don't feel comfortable with this chart just of its own volition. And it does move pretty aggressively when it moves, but it doesn't look safe here. Potential short targets to the downside, we have 148.73, and this is presuming we lose 157.42. Below that, we've got 137.90. And all the blue lines on my chart, blue always, from a horizontal perspective, signifies high volume areas drawn on the weekly time frame. White would be on the daily time frame, and I keep that just across all of my charting just to be consistent with it. So underneath there, we've got 131.98 and then 127. So general market rug pull, that kind of gives you, we have a ton of support down 114.5 to 116. So if we do break through everything, I would see a pretty easy potential to move into that range. So I'll post this chart, and it looks like we've got 1 or 2 more to go ahead and knock out. And we are under 5,100 on ES, outside of our average daily range entirely on ES right here. So not sure if something got announced. I'm in the middle of streaming, so not really paying attention to that, not in any trades right now. But that was pretty aggressive right there. Our 12:30 p.m. candle. Look there. Okay. Crocs is the next one. I'm gonna go ahead and readjust I'm actually off screen on my ES execution chart. That way we can see levels below. 2022B adjusted high is what's below us. I actually haven't moved my 10 daily moving average, so we're going to disregard that for our purposes for right now at least. 5085 is your high time frame structure we need to be looking at as far as if we lose that, we can see continued downside on ES. And that's been our big range, 5085 to 5150-ish. All right, Crocs on the weekly. I think I'm only going to put 20. Yeah, I'm going to put 2 years on. There's a lot of information from 22 that's not really relevant for a company like this right now. So as far as finding support, I'd really like 122.36 to hold. If we don't hold that on a weekly time frame, it's pretty easy room to 107.37, and we're actually going to make that a range 103, we'll call it 104 to 107 half as where we probably start finding some short covering buyers if it does sell off. Below that is kind of sloppy, tiny bit at 97.58. I guess I'll mark that one. I'm not completely in love with it. I'm really looking at this 77.18 as a downside target if we lose it. Let me look at daily and see if there's anything more interesting here. ES is recapturing that key psychological level of 5101 on some short covering buying, but I'm not convinced for sure. All right. So as far as trend lines go, we can, let's see what we have here. Little broadening formation to the upside, but nothing that really catches my attention. So from a daily perspective, I actually like it a lot less. I really want to see what the close is. If we can close above 122.36 with a follow-up from FOMC, then I'll be more interested in re-looking at it. All right, I think, do we have one more? That's actually everything. We're actually a little bit over time. I'm actually behind for a meeting, so I am going to have to wrap this up here. So if you can get those tickers in early, that definitely helps us be able to know how many we have to get through. And we are really trying to give the analysis that we do in our heads in seconds of time. We would not, the way that we talk about it and kind of go through it is the verbalization of what we're seeing and why we're making the decision. But most of the time, we would be looking at these and say, nope, don't like it, on to the next. And then we'll have people say, well, why don't you like it? And so what we're trying to do is verbalize, kind of walk through to narrate what's those split second decisions are being made based off of and give you that visual representation of it. So hoping it helps as far as your technical analysis. And if you have charts and you're wondering, should I enter long term? Is this a good idea? Or I have leap calls or next month dated puts or whatever it is, it would help us target answer maybe a little bit more if we were looking deliberately at analysis from that perspective. Otherwise, it's hard for us to know what positions are or what you're considering. So that definitely, the more information you can give us when you're looking at the tickers, if you don't want the general information that we're doing just of the overall view, that will definitely be appreciated. All right, guys, I have to hop on a phone call. I will be back in voice in about, this is a pretty quick phone call. I'll be back on voice in about 15 minutes. Coming into the end of lunch, and we'll see if we can make us some more money on this Tuesday before FOMC.